Hey everyone, and welcome to a new OpenRCT2 update video. Version 0.4.22 has been released, and the developers have named it Jump Across the English Channel.
You're intending to jump across the English Channel.
Oh yes, that is correct, yes.
Now, there have been quite a few improvements, fixes and changes in this new release, so let's go over them. Alright, I'll start with the most exciting change, in my opinion at least, and that the new track pieces for the go-karts have been added to the game. So now you have a lot more different turn sizes to choose from, and you can even make sloped turns if you want. We also have S-bands, and the go-karts can now also traverse diagonal track. Previously they would just teleport through it. Now, and if you enable the cheat to enable all drawable track pieces, you also get these steep slopes. But the go-karts don't actually have sprites for those. So it may look a little bit silly when they traverse them. I still think it works well enough. So if you want steep slopes on your go-kart track for some reason, now you can do that if you want. But yeah, personally I think these large turns are amazing. And I'm definitely going to use them on my go-kart tracks in the future. Alright, for the next change we go to the options menu. And in the options menu you can choose your drawing engine. I've selected OpenGL here, it says experimental. Now, one thing which OpenGL did not do was screen invalidation. So in human language it means that every frame it would redraw everything that's on the screen. But screen invalidation is now supported by OpenGL, so it will only redraw the parts of the screen where something changes. For example, we can see some guests walking around here. Well, I'm assuming these regions over here would continually be redrawn, so we can actually see the guests move here. But this section over here does not change at all, so this part would then not have to be redrawn. Now, having screen invalidation like this could lead to a huge performance increase, especially in large parks where on a large part of the screen nothing is moving. Alright, and on the topic of drawing engines, there used to be 3 options here. It used to say software, then the second option would be software, hardware display, and then the third option OpenGL. But the first 2 options have been merged into one called software. Now, I don't think anybody used the first option anyway, but now the game will pick the applicable software renderer for you when you choose the first option. So this is a little bit less work for the developers to maintain. Now there's only 2 options left. Okay, something has been changed in the way that the game handles entertainers. Previously, to check if an entertainer should make a guest happy, the game would loop through the list of all guests, and for all guests it would check if they were in the range of a specific entertainer, and if so, the entertainer would make the guests happy. But for large parks with a lot of guests and a lot of entertainers, these calls would give a pretty big hit on performance. Now, this has now been changed, so the game will now actually only check a region around the entertainer, and then it will only loop through the guests who are in that region. And that will definitely make this function a lot faster. Okay, the next few changes all have to do with RCT Classic. There was an issue with using RCT Classic for macOS as the source game for OpenRCT2, but that has now been improved. So now you can also use RCT Classic for macOS as the source game for OpenRCT2. On the same topic, if you've installed RCT1 or RCT2 through Steam, OpenRCT2 should now be able to automatically find those installations. Now, and if you're playing Rollercoaster Tycoon Classic Plus through Apple Arcade, this can now also be used as the source game for OpenRCT2, and it should detect the installation automatically. Alright, and if you've installed RCT Classic on Windows through Steam, this installation should now also be detected automatically by OpenRCT2. Okay, for the next change we go back to the options, and in the options we can select the Enlarged UI, Now, a lot of things, especially the menus, stuff gets spaced further apart. But one thing that was now also changed is the height of the title bar for screens. And that should definitely make it easier to drag these windows to a different spot, especially if you're using a touch interface. Alright, the next one is another change to the interface. Here in the cheat menu we have the scenario options window. And well, there used to be another option here called scenario objectives, but the scenario objectives have now been merged into this window. For me personally, I also always selected the wrong one when I wanted to change something in the scenario objectives or some of the options. But yeah, that will no longer happen since they are now both merged into the same window. But here in these different tabs, you can find all these different options, all neatly in the same window. Okay, some more functionality has been added for plugins. You can now set a breakdown through plugins, you can read the current breakdown, and you can also fix rides again through plugins, if that's what you want. Okay, for the next change we go to the scenario thunderstorm park, and I've actually set it to have permanent thunderstorms. But yeah, something which would happen if you sped up the game during a thunderstorm is that the lightning would flash very frequently, but that has now been changed so that the lightning flashes happen independent from the game speed, so they will keep happening at the same frequency. So you won't get a constant flashing in your screen while you're speeding up the game. As you can see, the game is now sped up 4 times and we don't see significantly more flashes than we used to. And even if we set it to ludicrous speed, you still don't see too many of these bright annoying flashes. Okay, for this next change we once again go to the options menu. Now I'm in here on the left for the display options. You can see it now has this icon of this display or this monitor. It used to actually have this icon that you see over here of the paintbrush painting a rainbow. But as you can see, it now has a different icon and it's even animated. And this also brings me to the next change. There used to be a tab here with a cogwheel icon, and it actually has been split in two. So under this one you find the interface options or the theme options. You can select a different theme for the interface. And here's several options which you can set to show different stuff in the toolbar. And then over here you can find options for the controls. So you can also see a mouse here and a keyboard. So this is now also the place where you can set your shortcut keys. And I think this definitely makes it easier to find in the options menu. Alright, for the people who like working in the track designer environment or the scenario editor, you can now also use your plugins in there. Alright, for the next change, it's probably easiest to just show you some before and after pictures. So before, if you had a lot of tabs in the top of your scenery window, then the space below it would actually be pretty small, and a lot of the scenery would be cut off. But that has now been changed, and even if you have a lot of tabs, the game will always draw the full height of one row of scenery objects. And that even goes for people who like to take it to the extreme. Okay, for this next change I'll have to do a little bit more explanation. Sometimes when people are building a coaster, there can be a support that's not in the correct location, or maybe someone wants to build their own custom supports and then the original supports have to be made invisible. Now, a very easy way for people to do this is to go into the tile inspector, then selecting the track piece and moving it under surface. In most situations this works really well. However, if someone did this above water, this would lead to the track piece becoming really glitchy, and when you move the screen it would sometimes disappear, or other stuff would happen and you would probably not be able to select the track piece anymore. But that has now been fixed, so now even when a track piece or a scenery object is above water, you can now move it under surface with the tile inspector, and the track piece or scenery object will still draw correctly. If you've ever made a roller coaster with a lot of inversions, you may have noticed that in the stat window it's not able to count past 31 inversions. But it has now been changed, so if you make a lot of inversions on your ride, the game should now be able to count past 31. Let's just quickly speed up this coaster. As you can see, it now has correctly counted 32 inversions on this coaster. Now, if we change the ride mode, let's set it to powered launch passing stations, and let's set it to 10 circuits. And I'm just going to speed up the game once again, and let's get it to do 10 circuits. And looks like the new limit is now 255 inversions, which should be enough for most rides. And the same thing also goes for mini golf holes. So if you have a really long mini golf track to torture your guests with, you can now keep accurate track of how many holes it actually has. Okay, for the next fix, if you have a ride vehicle that cannot actually be recolored, like this teleporter cabin from the expansions, if you went to the recoloring options, there would always be an option here for recoloring. So there would be one of these squares here, you could pick a color, but it wouldn't actually do anything. So that has now been fixed. So if you have a vehicle like the teleporter cabin which cannot be recolored, you can see there's no longer an option here to recolor it. Now, OpenRCT2 allows you to select asset packs, and basically asset packs allow you to, for example, override certain sound effects. So at the bottom of this list here we see the bass, graphics, music and sound effects. So that's all the sound effects from the original Rollercoaster Tycoon 2. But OpenRCT2 has also added some of its own sound effects, which will then override some of the original sound effects, like some other chain lift sounds, and there's even more of these sound effects that were added in OpenRCT2. Now, there was actually a bug which caused these sound effects or these asset packs not to actually be loaded when the game was started up. But that has now been fixed. So when you start up the game and you have one of these asset packs selected, it should now properly override the original sound effects again. Okay, if you were building a Hyper-Twister coaster or a Hypercoaster and you activated the cheat to enable autodetected track pieces, a lot of the special elements would not actually be available. But that has been changed. So now you can build large half loops again, for example, or 0G rolls. All the pieces that are drawable for these track types are now once again available if the cheat is activated. Alright, those were some of the most exciting changes that happened in this release of OpenRCT2. You can find the full changelog in the link in the video description. Now, if you enjoyed this video or if it was useful for you, please like this video. It would really help out my channel. Please let me know in the comments what you think of these changes. And if you want to stay updated on the development of OpenRCT2, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet. Alright, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you again in the next one. See you later.